Hey everyone, just Guns and Logic, waiting on the school pickup line, and you know what, kind of got to thinking of what I think would be an interesting topic is the difference between a hard target and a soft target. And in case anyone is paranoid, I know Georgia is a hands-free state. I'm not driving, I'm parked, so just I wouldn't do that. So, but anyway, the idea behind a soft target and hard target kind of comes down to the path of least resistance. If someone wanted to commit evil, as many people have suggested, different Senate interviews I've watched, there was not a senator, but I believe a congressman from Tennessee after a shooting that happened either last year or 2 years ago. He was talking about how, people are going to commit acts of evil, because we have laws already in place, but they're going to come up with a way to do it. And I looked up, there's a couple of websites and statistics online that talk about just mass shootings, which there isn't a clear definition on mass shootings that I have found. There's a definition on mass killings, which is 3 or more in a particular area at one time. Mass shootings, though, it's a little bit more loosely defined, or lack thereof defined. So I typed in mass killing in Google, but the most popular that came up is mass shootings. And there was a couple of statistics in there, and a lot of them had to do with schools and workplaces seem to make up way of the majority. And unfortunately, I think those are both, depending on where you work at. If it's an office setting, yeah, I can see that being a soft target, but if you work at a police station, that's probably more of a hard target. But therein lies the difference, is you don't really hear about any of the mass killings or gun violence that happens towards a police station, because what are the likelihoods that you are going to, as a criminal, what would be the success rate of trying to go against a police station? Well, every single person in that building is going to have a gun. And now on the opposite fence, how often do you hear about like a bicycle bar being sabotaged in some way? It's like, yeah, they're not going to call the police if you roll up on them with a gun. So, again, what is your likelihood of success trying to do any type of harm in, although two extreme examples, police station obviously, and then a biker bar, I would say that's on the other end of the spectrum. But still, you're not gonna have a very high success rate if your goal is to seek vengeance, angle, lash out. Many of the side effects that we've been seeing, especially with any of the ones with the school having to do with revenge and the mental illness. I haven't brought up mental illness a whole lot. I need to look at it a little bit more as far as how does that get into background checks. I find that kind of interesting. I wonder how would you be able to do that with HIPAA laws? So I just find like there might be some underlying things there, but I know those red flag laws in certain places that say, if you do have a suspicion that maybe someone shouldn't own a gun, then you can mention something to someone, and then action will take place. But yeah, so this is why a part of the introduction that I had said as to why I think education's important is, especially education on guns, is not necessarily to, if your household remember, I don't think you should necessarily hide the fact that you have a gun from other household members. Like I said, you're going to have to judge your own maturity, the maturity level of your household. But also, what would be now a solution to lessen gun violence in general? And whether it be gun violence or just maybe even maybe take away the gun and just take away the mass violence in circumstances, because although right now guns are made to be efficient, and in a capitalistic society, which we're in, there's competition to who's going to make the best gun. All the way going back, the muskets that took, 5 minutes to reload. Now we could have places that sell 100 drum magazine legally to civilians that's semi-automatic, meaning, shoot as fast as your trigger can pull. So there is more of an efficiency. Olio talked about the AR-15, it being just tactical and efficient. Same thing with the semi-automatic pistol, getting into just how many magazines you can hold, the ease of carrying, and then you have the tactical rifle that's accurate and powerful and can sustain firepower towards the target, just all those things. And the gun industry just being constantly trying to increase and adapt and come out with new technology, new gun designs, although I'm a little bit partial to the 1911. That design has been just awesome, I think, ever since, even though it does only have a low capacity round for 7 or 8, one in the chamber. But I loved the design, and then they came out with the 2011, which is a double stack version, which is on my bucket list to get at some point. But anyway, that being said, I do think that now, without going to the two extremes, we talked about soft targets and hard targets. Well, how do we make these areas now then a hard target? What would make it so, it wouldn't be worth going after, or a person that wants to commit these evils finds that it's not worth it? They're not going to succeed. There's too many places that someone who really wanted to commit the crime can make it far. And a lot of these shootings, if the end result, not many of the shooters live at the end. And part of it, that's their goal. They don't really have an exit plan. So if there was an exit plan, or if they wanted to have an exit plan, then I think they would probably go about a little bit differently. But just from what I've researched so far, it just seems like the exit strategy was death from the get-go. So that definitely adds an element. And part of my suggestion, and I think this would be worth exploring, getting more into in other videos as to how would this be manageable, or maybe, just different ideas. But yeah, I think the crux of it is what would be the carrot. We've heard a lot about the carrot and the stick. We had the stick of like, guns are bad, or people are bad, or the mental illness. A lot of, the stick side of things, that if you do this, you're going to be punished. Or, a good example would be, any type of ban that gets advertised. Mostly all I've seen increases gun sales. I think it was in 2008, there was the Obama gun scare, because everyone thought, he was going to be the one to just take all the guns away. So back in a past job, you should, like, the next year's sales after the gun scare, everything was in red because of just everything that was, so many things were sold in that year, thinking, oh crap, we got to buy everything as much as we can. So any type of gun scare typically just leads to either more loopholes, as far as, okay, the 80% receiver that I talked about in another video. It's like, okay, well, now they just don't sell the jig with the receiver or with the block of metal. Or, hey, you want a short-barreled rifle, get an AR pistol. That's essentially very, very similar, except for some tactical differences, I'm sure, but loopholes. So I'm proposing what would be the carrot now at the end of this conversation. I saw an interesting interview with Jon Stewart and a retired ATF agent. And I think the ATF agent had a good point. That's kind of where I'm getting the carrot and the stick idea from. It was the problem with Jon Stewart talking to the ATF guy, and how there's a lot of people who even lie on background checks. And, Jon Stewart brought up, okay, there was a problem with DUIs back in the day. So what ended up happening is that there was a crackdown on drunk driving, traffic checkpoints, and many things to encourage police officers to crack down on drunk driving. Well, then the ATF had a good point. Okay, well, the officers, though, that were involved had the resources to do it. The state gave them the resources. They approved the overtime. They approved the equipment. They approved the training. They got paid more. They got bonuses. They got, all these things as to, okay, this is why drunk driving has been tapered down. Although not perfectly, but it was still cracked down on. So he brought up more of the carrot conversation as to, true, there was a crackdown on drunk driving, but then there was also a reward for police officers for doing so. But possibly kind of in a like way of thinking, and I'm just kind of curious as what people would think as I'm kind of thinking out loud is, if we had a program for retired vets, or maybe just retirees in general, I think that would be, and if they were willing to do security rounds, like a more of a official neighborhood watch, let's say, those are the veterans who don't necessarily want to go back into contracting, but want to do a part to keep these soft targets safe. And I bring up retirees, it's like almost, hey, ask your old man, hey, rather than playing Sudoku at the house, why don't you play Sudoku at the school and keep an eye on things, do a couple laps around the building just to make sure things are good. And now all of a sudden we have a job opportunity for veterans that are coming home and are getting a pension, because I can't imagine I can't imagine a neighborhood watch being too thinking of wages and benefits. I can't imagine a watch, like a neighborhood watch, having a sustainable wage, but maybe those that are already getting a pension and of some kind, maybe a part-time pay might actually be a little bit more, part-time pay would be a little bit more manageable, or government resources as to like, okay, how do we, not necessarily take away from the students, but as a way to finance watch groups for, it doesn't even have to be school specific, but county specific, it's just like you have a group of people who can actually just, hey, you're on shift today and you're going to go school to school, just make sure everything's good, and, you can even make it to where it's non-lethal only. We had those back in the correction facility back in Colorado, that the non-lethal shotgun, and maybe that's just the and taser, but maybe those are the things that a neighborhood watch would get trained on, and then that way it's just, the lethality of things is just, that's still going to be left, that call still gets left to police and law enforcement. But as far as just the idea that someone evil or someone who wants to commit the crime isn't somehow going to run into opposition and not have a chance to success, would that be enough to deter them from committing the crime in the first place? Not necessarily the law that already exists saying, okay, this area is a gun-free zone. Because they don't, especially if they're going in to die, that's the least of their problems, is that they're in a gun-free zone. However, not being able to complete their mission or to do what they want to do because they might get opposition from a group of retired people. And, I don't know about you guys, but, it's kind of one of those sayings. I wasn't in the military, wanted to be, couldn't be. But from what I've seen and what I've heard, once a Marine, always a Marine. If I had a retired Marine or a veteran Marine coming back or an older Marine and he wanted to keep an eye on the schools, heck yeah, give that guy a non-lethal shotgun or a taser and have him watch out, because he will hit whatever it is he's aiming at. Guarantee it. But that's my shout out for veterans and our military. They will hit what they aim at. So, but anyway, food for thought, hoping this kind of starts the conversation. We've heard a lot about punishments. Now, how do we reward responsible gun owners? And then also, how would a responsible gun owner be enough to deter somebody from committing a crime? So we'll dive more into that and in other videos as we explore kind of maybe some different options or government grants. But wanted to just seem like a good opportunity waiting for my kids, picking them up from school. So hope everyone has a good day. Thanks for listening.